70% of employees say that their leader's presence, 70% now, directly impacts their engagement. Presence doesn't mean that you have charisma. It doesn't mean that you speak loud and you have volume. You command presence, right, in the room. It goes back to being that most interested person, not the most interesting person. One thing I want to leave you with, and we talked about a lot today, 70%, remember, of employees say that their leader's presence increases their engagement. So one, we decided what presence was. It's that alignment, the alignment between the inward mindset and the outward behavior. Hey everyone, John here. Welcome to the episode today. I have a question for you all. What if the single biggest barrier between you and the team that you want isn't money, it's not strategy, but guess what it is? It's the energy that you bring to the team. It's the energy that you bring to your business. And today, we're going to unpack some techniques to give you presence. Now, one thing that, I always talk about is it's the energy that we bring day in and day out. As leaders and as business owners, we can't afford to have a bad day. And I've been reading some studies. As always, I look for information to help support some of the things. This is my advice. This podcast, I share my 2 decades of leadership experience with you all, and it's free. It's absolutely free. So if you're enjoying this content, do me a favor, subscribe, click on that bell, share this episode with somebody, and leave a comment if you have a question. I'm going to have a challenge for you at the end. So I'm going to have you leave a comment down in there. But 70% of employees say that their leader's presence, 70% now, directly impacts their engagement. And I can get behind that because if you've ever worked for an organization or led an organization that just feels blah, there's no energy there, you're coming in, punching the clock, doing the work, punching the clock at the end of the day, it's just day to day. There's a saying, every other Friday, I get a paycheck, right? Every other Friday. If you hear that within your organization, that's a red flag for you as a leader and a business owner. So today, I'm going to share some practical applications, as always, for you. So get out your journals. I want you to be in that active listening mode. If you're working out or you're driving, whatever you're doing, bookmark this episode so that way you can come back to it, because we're going to talk about how you as a leader can gain presence within your team and within your business. So the first thing I wanted to talk about today was really understanding what presence means, because again, we use these words and I want to operationalize them. So presence doesn't mean that you have charisma. It doesn't mean that you speak loud and you have volume. You command presence, right, in the room. It goes back to being that most interested person, not the most interesting person in a conversation. And that's really what presence is about. But fundamentally, what I see presence in leaders, they have alignment. They have alignment between the internal, what their mindset is, and the outward, the external, how they behave. So I want you to think about that as we go through each one of these applications and ask yourself, are my inner thoughts, my mindset, in alignment with my external behaviors throughout each one of these applications and the next 2 topics that we're going to talk about? It's important for us. Again, I put these podcasts together to help you as leaders and you as business owners, and it takes some work. Nothing is going to happen overnight. It's a lot of hard work that we're going to have to do in order to build the team that we want to build. So when I talk about, how presence or how important alignment is, think about somebody that you've recently met, a stranger, or maybe you've heard of them from a friend of a friend of a friend, right? And you've built up this big persona about this person, and you finally get to meet them. You shake their hand, tell them hello, and then the rest of the conversation is all about them. The rest of the conversation is all about their accolades. You don't even get a word in. Is that presence? That's not presence. Presence builds that first impression. And my dad always told me that you only have one chance for your first impression. So your presence and how you show up to those types of conversations matter. They really, really do matter. The other thing that presence does, and as I was journaling this morning, it's easy to think about people who don't have presence, right? People who, if you have met, like I just mentioned, and they fall flat. You built them up to be something bigger than what they are. And what they're lacking is trust. And that's what a person who has presence brings to the relationship, is trust. It also reduces micromanagement as a manager. And we'll talk more about some applications and why that's important, because the micromanagement piece, your good employees, they're going to leave if you micromanage them. And then you're going to be stuck with all the employees that are just so-so. And I don't know about you, but for me and my businesses and my organizations, I want 9s and 10s. I don't want the 6 and 7s to stick around, but that's what you're going to get if you do not work on some of these things, such as presence, and you begin to micromanage people. So take a hard look at really what your presence is. Are you in alignment? And a way to do this are those days or those instances where you feel off. And I can point back to a couple of times in the past month when I just felt off, like the energy wasn't there. The room was really quiet. People, they weren't like bringing answers like they normally do or ideas to the table. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is looking back at those instances, those examples, and just saying, okay, what went on there, and digesting that and really making sure that we don't do that again, because it felt off, and it felt off for a reason. Because if you're practicing these things, these applications to building presence, it's going to feel off when you get that sense. So understanding presence, it's not charisma or volume. It's all about alignment. It's about alignment, internal, your mindset, and external, your outward behavior. So the application for this particular section today is, I want you to write down a time where you felt truly present in a conversation. That could be in a conversation, a one-on-one conversation. It could be in a meeting. It doesn't necessarily have to be at work or in your business. It can be at home, or it can be outside of both of those environments. We communicate and have those conversations all the time. But what I want you to get here is just the feeling, where you were, your mental state, internal, and then how were you behaving? Okay, so write down those observable things. The next thing we're going to talk about is cultivating presence. And here, now that we've defined it, now that we understand that it's about alignment, how can we cultivate that feeling? And I wrote down, find ways to anchor and ground yourself. I think that is important as we begin to develop new habits. This is a habit that if you currently don't have presence or are working on presence, gaining presence, then you're going to have to find ways to figure out, like, when you get off track, when you have those days, those off days, how can you anchor yourself back to that alignment? When you get misaligned, how can you get back into alignment? So we're going to talk about a couple things here. And nonverbal communication makes up a majority of our communication model. Verbal communication is your spoken words are a very small part. So when I'm talking about cultivating presence, here what I want you to focus on, one thing is your posture. When you're in a meeting, you're sitting at the table, it might be the front of the table, or maybe it's a stand-up meeting, whatever that is, what's your posture? Is it closed off? Are your arms crossed? Be mindful of that. The other thing, the pace. If you've ever sat in a meeting where it sounds like you're in an auction and an auctioneer is up there talking, giving you a presentation, you know what I'm talking about. So the pace of your voice, the tone of your voice is also important. Those are the things that people see before they hear. So I want us to focus here on this particular section with our posture, our pace, and our eye contact. Now, in certain cultures, they don't make eye contact. So just be aware of that. But for the most part, it lets the individual know that you have their undivided attention. So all of these things are going to amplify your message and gain you presence. Try it on. I want to take a quick break from the episode today to talk about a couple things. The first thing, less than 40% of our listeners are subscribed to our channel. You would be doing me a huge favor if you click on that subscribe button. It helps us grow our Go Be Great community and get this podcast out to as many people as we possibly can. The second thing, are you a small business owner? that is drowning in the day-to-day operations. You're delegating tasks and you're still doing all the work. You're experiencing a high turnover. Maybe you don't have the systems and processes in place that you need to run a successful business. I invite you to go over to thejohnespinosa.com, fill out the form to see if you're the right fit. Now back to the episode. So some applications here. Next conversation. Again, this can be at work, it can be with your team, or it can be at home. See if you are able to give that individual that you're talking to, this is a one-on-one, your undivided attention. Now, what does undivided attention look like, John? It means removing those distractions. How many of you have to have your phone on the table? And if it's facing up as it's blinking or as you got alerts going off, that's distracting your attention. Or removing barriers out of the way. When I'm having a conversation, I try to remove any physical barriers between me and the person that I'm talking to. Those types of things allow the individual to understand that they have our undivided attention. I'll mute my computer, I'll turn it off, I'll put it on sleep, I'll close my laptop lid, whatever you have to do to demonstrate that that individual has your undivided attention, get it done. You would be surprised at the quality of the conversations that you will have when somebody feels as if they have your undivided attention. So that's one application here. And then the other piece here that, when I talk about cultivating presence is journaling. I know I'm a big journaler and I talk about this all the time, but going back to those examples in the first topic of, when have you felt off? When is a meeting you just walk in and everything just feels off? Journal that down. Get everybody's demeanor and I will get very specific here. I will say, Carl, he was slumped back in his seat. Mary, she just was on her phone the whole entire time and wasn't really paying attention to me. Dave, he had his computer open and he looked like he was composing an email, right? And the presentation, what's the feeling in the room? What's the atmosphere? I write all of that stuff down and then I'll go back in and I'll say, you know what? Yeah, the energy was off, or maybe the message was wrong, or maybe the meeting didn't start off the right way. So those are things when we begin to cultivate presence, is to figure out what's working, what's not working, and then that way we have some tangible things that we can work on. Every single team is going to be different. Every single leader is going to be different. So those are important things to look back on. And if we want to improve, which you all do if you're listening to this podcast, those are the things that you can grab onto and work on in your next meeting. So the last thing that we're going to talk about, and this is the technique that I mentioned earlier, was how do we deploy it? How do we deploy presence to make an impact on our teams? One thing that I've seen great leaders do, and I try to duplicate in my meetings, the first 60 seconds sets the tone for that entire meeting. The first 60 seconds, what you say, how you open the meeting, the energy that you bring, it only takes 60 seconds to do that. And it can set you up for success, or it can set you up for a meeting that you just felt off that day. So here, when I talk about, and I give you examples about deploying presence, the first 60 seconds are going to be the most critical time period for you to set the tone, establish your presence in the meeting, right? And allow people to, again, get that energy and let them know that we're here for business. We got a task to do. Here's what we're going to get done. So some things that deploying presence allows us to do is, one, we build rapport. We build rapport, especially if you're in front of a group that you may not know, you're not acquaintances with. So here you build rapport. And we do that through a couple different ways. I've seen people who are just excellent persons, and they are able to create this special bond, this unique kind of relationship with people in a very short amount of time. And I begin to really observe these leaders within these organizations and talk to them and say, what is it? What is it about the way that you communicate that allows you to establish this rapport very quickly? 3 things that they mention. The first thing, use their first name. Learn their first name and then repeat that at least 5 to 7 times throughout the conversation. Now, it can be a very short conversation, but again, you're repeating their first name. The second thing, pay attention to your posture. Actually, what they said here and what I wrote down was lean forward or sit forward if you're in a seat. Sit forward. It brings, again, remove those barriers, but it brings you closer to that individual. And the third one is removing distractions. So again, close those laptop screens. Put your phone in your pocket. Don't even lay it on the desk. Get out from behind maybe the physical barriers that you have between. But those three things were the three things that people that I have observed who are excellent communicators develop rapport in a very short amount of time. Use their first names, lean or sit forward, and then remove those distractions. So one thing that I also noticed is how they speak and how their behaviors are, right? Because again, we're going back to presence being mindset in alignment with outward behaviors. And one thing that I use, one saying, one phrase that I use quite a bit, especially when I'm trying to remain curious, is help me understand. When we are listening to somebody and they're bringing us a challenge, they're bringing us a problem, as leaders, our jobs are to cultivate leaders. And if they're coming to us and we're giving them solutions, that's not cultivating leaders. So help me understand is a phrase that I use to allow them to work through, to critically think through that problem or that challenge and come up with a solution that they own. And then now what you do, you may need to make a little tweak. You may ask some more questions, ask them if they thought about, things in a different way, kind of play the devil's advocate there. But after you're good with that and they're good with that, now what you've created is a leader who's going to go off and own whatever solution that they came up with, and they're going to go get that thing done. I can promise you it's going to be a heck of a lot different than if somebody comes to you, you come up with the solution as the leader, as the business owner, and then kind of dictate to them how to do it. So that one thing, that one phrase has helped me in more conversations, in more situations, gain presence than any other phrase. Try it on. And then again, our ability to stay calm, no matter how stressful the situation is, our ability to maintain our voice cadence. So speak slowly, don't speak too slowly, but again, don't be that auctioneer voice. And then last but not least, ask questions, get curious. Help me understand, ... Help me understand, where this challenge or what the root cause of this challenge is in your opinion. Whatever that looks like, those things are going to help you deploy presence for impact. So one thing I want to leave you with, and we talked about a lot today, 70%, remember, of employees say that their leader's presence increases their engagement. So one, we decided what presence was. It's that alignment, the alignment between the inward mindset and the outward behavior. We talked about how to cultivate it. Find ways to ground yourself and bring yourself back to that kind of common ground whenever you notice things feel off. Last but not least, deploying presence. Deploying presence, this is where we put everything to action. This is how we're going to build rapport. So the key things when we want to build rapport with somebody is use their first name, lean into the conversation physically, lean in whether you're sitting or standing, and then remove those distractions. Those are going to help you deploy presence for impact and make you a better leader for your team and a better leader for your organization. I believe in you. Hope this helps somebody today. Go be great. Talk to everyone later. Bye-bye. If you like what you're hearing, do us a favor. Click on that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up or leave a comment. That lets us know that what we are putting out benefits you. If you want additional information or resources or learn how to work with me, head on over to thejohnespinosa.com, because when we become better versions of ourselves, it helps us get others to where they're going. Go be great. Talk to everyone later.